Hey folks, Easy Jeezy here. Guess we'll just keep going on my Volkswagen heads tips and tricks. I think we're up to like number 3. I got a little out of frame with that last one, and we'll do a little bit of a do-over in this one. I didn't want to do the whole thing over, but anyhow, this probably be a good time too to I want to stress the importance of safety. Anytime you're working around, you know, springs or sparks or fire or compressed air, you need to really think safe and be safe, and you know, it's too late when something happens, and you know, I thought it'd be important to stress that, and I'm just kidding. That was just for a laugh. Probably not very funny anyhow. I did have an accident when I was a kid, and I did lose part of my vision in my right eye, and it's something I've struggled with my whole life. So I wanted to make sure and stress that. And you know, when it comes to tools and equipment in your shop, you know, you should always be careful, and you know, you would never want to use a grinder or something like this. I mean, for crying out loud, look at that thing. The guard's missing. There's no guard on the wire brush, and you know, you got to watch your hands and stuff. But anyhow, that being said, let's get started. So on that previous video, we were talking about the valve, and let's see, that one I wanted to demonstrate with an old valve that I did take out of that one of my engines here. One of the little tricks that I do. We're talking performance tips and tricks. Anything that you can do to smooth out the flow of air in those ports and in that engine is going to make it run better. Now, you'll notice in Darren's video, he's got some cool stuff. Boy, I wish I had his tools. But he grinds the valve so that it moves the margin, the seating surface. You make it fine, and you raise it up close to the top. And you know, all that stuff is great, but if you don't have to give up just because you don't have the right tools. I've been doing it without that for a long time. He mentioned just, you know, lapping a valve in isn't a valve job or a performance valve job, and he's absolutely right. But I've had to settle for that. And you know, if you buy some stock performance heads, it's just like they say, like a single port head that's had the heck modified out of it is probably as good as, at its best, as a dual port head that's not modified. And same thing goes for if you go with like a CB Performance 44 Magnum. That's the one I used to like. Is what was it? What was it? Stock heads 35 by 32. I think I used to go 40 by 35 because that's what Gene Berg recommended, and it made sense. And you know, that head starting off out of the box would probably be like a highly modified stock head with a 35-32. But anyhow, what you can do to help out the performance and stuff with it is you can do it by hand, just eyeballing it. Is just take that little bit of that little shoulder, because that's going to create turbulence as it's coming through there. And all I do on mine, and you just be real careful, take your time. You should never ever grind on the side of a grindstone. Don't ever do this. And you can feel it. I just got to go a little at a time. And all I'm doing, doesn't look too bad for an old man, I hope. Hope I'm in the frame this time. But what I'm just doing is this, there's a little sharp edge there, and I'm just taking that off. I'm not sacrificing the integrity of the valve. I'm not hurting anything. It probably does make it just a little bit lighter. And I'll get all my valves lined up. Once you start lapping your valves and modifying them and stuff, keep them in the same hole. And here's another thing that I usually have hanging from my grinder. When your grinding stone gets unsquare, and maybe you're sharpening drill bits or something like that. For those that don't know about it, maybe you've seen one of these tools when you go to Harbor Freight or looking in the catalog. You look at all these little funny looking wheels and you say, what the heck is that for? Well, I'll show you. What you do, stand to the side, have your eyewear, and you go back and forth. If you look at one of Darren's videos, when he was cutting his stones for grinding his valves, he was using a diamond to get that angle just right. And this is a same type of tool. Not same type of tool. It's not same type of tool. This is just a tool that the average person can have and hold, and you can square up your stone. And a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it too, you shouldn't try to use a stone for grinding brass or aluminum or any non-ferrous metal. You should stick to steel and what it was made for, and it'll tell you on the stone, as it just clogs them up and then they don't grind very well. But this will get all that out of your stone and clean it up. But anyhow, I thought I'd show you that, and as long as I'm showing you bad habits, I don't know if you'll recall from my remember when we were go to my full flow 1 video, and when we were full flow in the case, I had those filings that came out of the case and off the side of the case and was on the floor. And I don't know how many of you guys have ever messed with this stuff, but when you're out camping in the middle of the night and somebody's got a case, you ever heard of a case fire? Let's see if I got any fuel in this thing. Great. Gosh, great to be entertaining, isn't it? Let me grab a striker over here since this is not cooperating. And as usual, I'm unprepared. You get some of those filings from magnesium. Now watch your eyes, because this could damage your eyes if you're out camping. But magnesium will burn, and it burns very bright. I don't know if you did that as part of a science project in school. But if you throw like a piece of a Volkswagen case into a campfire and leave it set for a while, that thing will, it's really smoky, but it is bright. And it won't go out. You can't put it out with water, and it's very entertaining. And if you bring along a welding mask, you can look through it and actually see it burning. If you try to put it out with water, watch out, because it'll just burn hotter. There's the oxygen that's in the water. And anyhow, if you're one of those survivalists or a prepper, some of those magnesium shavings would be excellent fire starter to carry in your little bag of tricks. And I'm not trying to be an idiot here and be unsafe or demonstrate bad things, but it's just all part of the game. And wanted to share all the secrets and the bad with the good here. And I got to get this in a better shot, because this is a cool tool and it works real easy, and that's why Easy Jeezy has it. So let's do this. Let's do another spring so you can see it a little better. Alright, so you got this tool that slides up and down. This thing was cheap too. I used to do this on the drill press and configure things, but here's all I was doing. It fits over the top of the spring. This is a stock spring that's been shimmed up. We talked about that in the other video. And the keepers come loose, and you just, a lot of times you can grab them both just like that and take them off and slowly release the spring pressure, and there you got it, you know. And putting them on is just as easy. The shims I was telling you about go right underneath the spring, and when you're putting it back on, you just kind of like, you can look down the top and get it just lined up a little bit better. Now you take your keeper, look for the tapered side, drop it down, and you're just holding on with one side. But this tool just makes it so much easier to put heads on, you know, springs in your back and your heads. And you get the other one lined up. And if you have a little bit of oil on there, you can get it to suck up against the valve, and it'll stay. And of course, as soon as you turn that camera on, it won't work. So make sure you don't have a camera running when you're trying to do this. Okay. Believe me, this is so much easier than doing it on the way I used to do it. Okay, you get them lined up, you look at the ends that are together. Now, as long as we're talking about valves and keepers, here's another little trick. If you're using stock valves, usually the little seam on the keepers will be touching, and that's because they want the valve to actually be able to float inside here. The valve will turn when it's in there, the spring turns, everything's rotating. That's why when you put your rocker arm assembly on, you don't have it lie on the center of your valve. You offset it just to the side, just like it says in the book, and every time that goes up and down, it moves, it rotates, it turns the valve. And if the stock keepers are touching, and that allows, it doesn't trap the valve, it doesn't keep it from turning. Now if you study the performance stuff, they don't care whether the valve turns or not. They say it really doesn't add that much to the life of the engine. Who's right and who's wrong, I don't know. But when you get aftermarket keepers and you're building a performance engine, and I got to go back to Gene Berg. I mean, that was the one guy that would publish stuff. I mean, it's so hard to find out what the winners do out there, but that guy back in the day actually published that stuff. And what he always said, and if you purchased his keepers, they always had a gap there. And that was so it did trap the valve. He didn't want any slop in there. If you're turning 9,000 RPM on an engine, you do not want any extra play, any extra clearance any place. You want that to be tight, because, you know, that kind of RPM is just, I can't even comprehend what's going on inside your engine. And everything's just happening so fast, and it'll just pound itself to death. Now, I don't know if I should make a separate video for this one, but I want to touch base on the valve guides. Whoa! We touched base all right, all over the floor. I hope you guys are entertained by this stuff. Now, these are to replace your valve guides. I did it in a drill press. If I get to that point where I'm doing that, I will show you. This special custom drill bit that I got fit snugly inside the valve, and that acts as a guide to help you keep it in there. What you do is you first would what you would do, have that in a drill press, have it set up where it's straight. Let's just take this valve out, get this one off the table. I'm going to save those two keepers, so I don't want to mix them up. What you would do is you would use this drill bit and a drill press and drill that down. That would relieve a lot of pressure off the guide that was in there, even if it was worn. Then you would take a tool that I dropped on the floor that I'm not seeing. Doggone it. Oh, there it is right here behind the vise. Okay, then what you would do is drive the old guide out, and by drilling it out, it removes some of the material, weakens the old guide. You don't want to damage or stress the head because it's a friction fit when you put the new guide in. And when you put the new guide in, you use this new tool and you slide the guide over it. It has a little shoulder on that so that you know how deep to go. You don't want to go too deep. This is all Gene Berg stuff from, I've had it laying around for a long time. What you do is you keep your valve guides, you put your valve guides in the freezer. Put them in there for half hour, an hour, 2 hours, overnight. It doesn't make any difference because brass isn't going to change too much, but if you can shrink it a little bit, that helps. And if you can warm your heads up in the oven for a while, 150, 200 degrees, you know, that helps too. You get your valves on a nice flat surface. You get your guide, and they tapered the guide for you a little bit. And you start that, and you just hammer that thing down, and you'd be surprised. It just sinks right in. Once that the frozen guide gets up to temperature, she'll be good and tight. And then they do make guides, oversized guides, because, you know, if you pop these guides in and out more than a few times, it's going to wear the head material away, and you'll have to do that. You can. I've seen people where they knurled a guide on the outside to displace the brass so that the stock guide would fit back in. But what happens is that will scrape the inside of the head material, and if you decide to press that guide out later, boy, that's just going to rip a lot of metal out. And heads are, good set of heads are tough to come by. This is a valve, a head cutting tool that fits in the valve guide. And if you're going to go to double springs instead of singles, you remove some of this boss. That's the material that's around the guide. After you put the new guide in, you'll cut it down with this tool, and you can put double springs in there, which will even give you more pressure. And I guess some guys even ran triple springs from time to time. And I can't imagine that, but I don't know what kind of tool. I don't think you'd be able to assemble them with a hand press like this. But the higher the RPM, the more spring pressure you need, that's for sure. So we covered a lot of stuff in this video. I think I'll sign off for now. And thanks for all the subs, thanks for the views, and catch you on the next one. Easy Jeezy out.